Good morning and welcome everyone. We're so happy to have you here with us for Life After High School 2022. I'm Amanda Kruger-Hill, Executive Director of the Cowan Institute and also a Professor of Practice at Tulane University. Today we'll be exploring economic and educational outcomes of young people in New Orleans. And in this presentation, we will share a brief overview of the Cowan Institute, background on life after high school data. We'll look at Orleans Parish demographics. We'll share key findings. We'll also share connections and ways to engage. And of course, we'll open it up for Q&A. And if you have questions, you can either put them in the chat or in the Q&A feature, and we'll create time at the end to answer those as well as throughout. So thank you again so much for being here with us. Our mission at the Cowan Institute is to advance public education and college and career success in New Orleans and beyond. All of the work that we do is in service to a vision of a New Orleans and a world where all people have equitable opportunities to grow and thrive along their educational and career pathways. And our work is organized around 4 strategic pillars. We contextualize data and provide thought leadership, and that is what we're doing today, focused on life after high school. We lead high impact direct programs, such as our Upward Bound program at Tulane, and also Trellis Hybrid College. And we have some amazing staff members on the call who are part of those programs. We build capacity and foster collaboration in the ecosystem. We also have partners at organizations like College Beyond and KIPP and New Orleans Public Schools who are on the call with us. And we develop and shape innovative initiatives to meet community needs. And the work that we are sharing today, as well as much of our work around life after high school, is supported by the Carnegie Corporation of New York and the Booth Bricker Fund. And this work would not be possible without their support. We're truly, truly grateful to Farhad Asghar, who's on the call, and Heather Travland and the other members of Booth Bricker who are also on the call. Thank you so much for your generous support for this work. And again, I'm Dr. Amanda Kruger-Hill, Executive Director of the Cowan Institute. So happy to be here in community with you all, sharing this data. And I'd like to pass it to my colleagues, Vincent Rossmeyer and Kate Babineau, who will be sharing more about the data. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, I'm Vincent Rossmeyer. Thank you so much for everyone, as always, for joining us. I think some of you are probably familiar with the Life After High School reports that we put out before. In 2019, we published our first Life After High School report. And what we really focus on is essentially trying to answer the question of what happens to young people in New Orleans after they leave high school. So we're focusing on educational and economic opportunities and circumstances for New Orleanians aged 16 to 24. We also did an updated report in June 2021. So this is our latest installment with the latest data that is available. So our goal, as always, is to provide actionable and accessible descriptive data on young people's economic and educational realities for use by practitioners, families, researchers, policymakers, and the community at large. And so this current report, similar to ones in the past, focuses on the current jobs and wages in the city, also with a special examination of the industries that employ larger numbers of youth, and post-secondary education with a focus on enrollment trends among historically excluded populations.
Sorry, I was on mute. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kate Babineau. I'm a senior research fellow and the director of research at the Cowan Institute. I'm really excited that you all came to join us today to talk a little bit more about our latest Life After High School report. I'm going to take over here and talk a bit about the data that we're using and that we've used in this specific report. And then I'm going to talk about some demographic information and post-secondary data before handing it back over to Vincent, who will talk about some of the economic outcomes. So for the data that's used in this particular report, our employment data, the vast majority of it is coming from MC, which is like a contract-based economic and demographic data hub. And they pull from a variety of sources, primarily the Bureau of Labor Statistics, but also American Community Survey and census data. For the post-secondary data specifically, there's currently not updated data from the Louisiana Department of Education past the 2019-2020 year with regards to post-secondary outcomes and high school graduation rates. So unfortunately, we're still going to be talking about the class of 2020 when we're talking about post-secondary outcomes for the time being, at least regionally. We were able to draw on national data from National Student Clearinghouse and state level data from the Louisiana Board of Regents, so we can get an idea of what's happening in the post-secondary space on a national level and on a state level. But when we're talking specifically about Orleans Parish outcomes, we'll be talking about the class of 2020, and that's highlighted throughout the report. So just like as a contextual grounding, we talk a little bit about some demographic information comparing Orleans Parish to the nation at large. This slide is specifically about economic outcomes. So what we can see here is that in Orleans Parish, when we're talking about median household income, we're seeing a median household income regionally that's, about $24,000 less than the national average of median household incomes. And naturally that would, confound with and translate to a higher poverty rate that we see in the city of New Orleans. So the poverty rate in Orleans Parish is about 23.7%, so nearly double that of the national poverty rate. We also have a lower overall employment rate in Orleans Parish than the national rate. It's worth noting that like an employment rate is not an inverse of an unemployment rate, right? Because there's lots of people who are always out of the workforce for a number of different reasons. So this isn't, the reverse of this isn't the city's unemployment rate. We will talk about that a little bit more in detail when we're talking about the economic data. But this is just kind of a top level overview to kind of get an idea of where we are compared to national averages on some of these economic measures. And I always include two broad demographic slides here so we can get a feel for, all of you, I'm sure, are very familiar with the racial demographics in Orleans Parish. But what we see is Orleans Parish is still a predominantly Black or African-American city. And, we have about 31% of the population identifying as white, about 5.5, a growing percentage of the population identifying as Hispanics or Latinx. And this is, quite different from the national average when we're looking at racial demographics along these lines. Our education levels are a bit more comparable with national averages. So what we see here is on the whole in Orleans Parish, actually, we have a higher percentage of individuals who have earned either a bachelor's degree or higher. So 22% of the population of Orleans Parish has earned a bachelor's degree and an additional 17%. So 39% of the population in Orleans Parish has a bachelor's degree or higher compared to 33% at a national level. However, the distribution is not equitable across racial or socioeconomic lines. Like we see white upper and middle class residents are far more likely to have earned a bachelor's degree or higher. So this is just to give you kind of a snapshot so that you have a context. And I think most of you are probably very well familiar with this, but I do think it's important to have it in the front of our head as we kind of start diving into some of the other data here. So as I said before, when it comes to the data that we have available for post-secondary outcomes for young people, the most updated data that we have is on a national level, not on a local level, unfortunately. But it should come as no surprise, and I'm sure everyone here is well familiar with this, that following the pandemic, undergraduate enrollment and post-secondary enrollment across the country took a major hit. So they've started to, I guess, stabilize a bit, but we're still seeing that national undergraduate enrollment rates are down 5%, more than 5% since the start of the pandemic, with a decline of 3.1% in the fall of 2021. We see that happening in Louisiana as well, where undergraduate enrollment drop was around 2.4%. So when I'm talking about undergraduate enrollment, I'm talking about all levels, not just freshman enrollment, right? That's just kind of like anyone who is enrolled in post-secondary institutions, 2-year public, 2-year private, 4-year public, 4-year private. That's including all of those when we're looking at that figure. We're seeing the sharpest declines with older student populations. So students aged 24 and older saw a drop of more than 9% since the start of the pandemic. And we also initially saw huge drops in freshman year enrollment in the fall of 2020. That's stabilized a bit in 2021, but we're still seeing freshman enrollment nationally is down 9% from pre-pandemic levels, which is pretty stark. And this is particularly pronounced with community colleges, where we've seen a drop of more than 15% of community college students in the last 2 years. So these figures are pretty startling. In terms of Orleans Parish specifically and what we're seeing with regards to post-secondary data, so as I said, this is all still from the 2020 cohort. So some of this you might be familiar with already, but the 2020 cohort graduation rate for public school students in Orleans Parish was 80%. Overall, we'd seen a growth rate of 2% from 2011, 2012, over the last 10 years, 2% graduation growth rate in Orleans Parish. This is slightly lower than the graduation cohort for the state of Louisiana, which is at 84%. When we're looking specifically at subgroup populations along racial socioeconomic lines, English language learners, et cetera, Orleans Parish graduation rates are more comparable with state averages, kind of within 1 percentage point. College enrollment in Orleans Parish, the last time we have data on that, consistent with national trends, is college enrollment was down following the pandemic. So it was down 4% in the fall of 2020. So 57% of public high school graduates in New Orleans enrolled in 2020 compared to 61% in 2019. The most notable subgroup shifts there were among Asian students and white students. And these were the two highest represented subgroup populations who were enrolling in college full stop. So, you're seeing pretty large drops from 88% to 76% among Asian students and 88% to 77% among white students between those 2 years. However, like college enrollment rates in Orleans Parish and among Orleans Parish high school graduates remains higher than state averages. The state average was at 57 or 53% compared to our 57. But the state drop that happened from 2019 to 2020 was 2% compared to 4% in Orleans Parish. That said, like among subgroups, Orleans Parish college enrollment rates are higher than state averages. So that's among historically excluded populations. So our Black students, our brown students, our students from lower income households. And that said, the inequities do still persist along racial and socioeconomic lines.
Okay, and
sorry, Vincent.
It's okay. So we wanted to talk a bit about the economic data. I think in the past, for those of you who have attended before, we've talked a lot about how New Orleans economy is rather limited. And by that, we mean that the highest paying jobs there are very few of them. And of them, they are overwhelmingly, the people who actually work in those jobs are overwhelmingly white. So for young students and young people in the city, it's very difficult to gain access to some of the higher paying jobs. That continues to be true. And what we've also seen is a longer trend that we're highlighting here of just overall job stagnation and even decline. So from 2019 to 2020, the number of jobs in New Orleans continue to decline, falling 2%. From over 203,000 jobs in 2021 to 200,000 jobs in 2020. From 2016 to 2021, the total number of jobs in Orleans Parish declined by 12%. So that's over a 5-year period. What's really interesting is if you look at the national growth rate in that time, it was 0.4%. So that's actually positive, where we have had a significant decline. Unemployment in the city has receded from its peak of 12% during the pandemic to 6% in December 2021, but that's still much higher than the national average. And then when you look at the jobs that young people are actually working in, they're mainly working in the accommodation and food services industry and also the retail industry, which are two of the industries with the lowest paying wages of any in the city. And so the jobs that they are most likely to work in 2020 were waiters and waitresses, cashiers, fast food and counter workers, and retail salespersons. And that's a problem too, because there's very limited upward mobility in most of those jobs as well.
Thanks, Vincent. So, I mean, that's our kind of top level key findings. I think a lot of it is stuff that we might be able to intuit at times, but what we wanted to show next, can everyone see my screen as I'm like pivoting to the cowandata.org site? Yes, great. So come up here just so you can see what it looks like on the landing page. Maybe you're familiar with this. This is our cowandata.org website where we publish, with most of our reports, some type of interactive data features so that if you have questions about anything specifically that we've talked about, you're able to explore it on your own or answer some specific questions that you might have. And also all of the data and the Tableau workbooks that are here are public and available to download. So, you can feel free to play around with it in any way that you like, if you're a data nerd like myself. So you can come on in here. Here's your introduction. And if you come to your table of contents, you've got the section on demographics, you have a section on post-secondary education, and a section on economic data. So what I wanted to do was just walk you through the graphics that we have included this year. Some of these are kind of like, they'll look familiar to you if you've seen our Life After High School reports in the past that we've updated with new data that's relevant to this year. On the post-secondary data front, like I said, we're still working with 2020 data, but I wanted to show you what we have available here and how to interact with these data features if you are inclined to do so. If you have any questions, I can't really see the chat, but you can drop them in there and someone from my team will yell at me and I will stop talking and I will answer your question. So the first graph that we have here is a bit about demographic characteristics of New Orleans public high schools. So you can hover over the info tab on any of these graphics and it's going to tell you about the data that we're working with. Like I said, there are 2021 enrollment counts that are available now, but because all of the post-secondary outcome data was from, like 2020, I was trying to keep it all in line with that specific year. Over here, you have a list of all of the New Orleans public high schools. Asterisks mean these are selective admissions schools. And if you hover over any given school, you're going to be able to see the enrollment characteristics by subgroup sociodemographic characteristics. So you can see the percentage of students who are Black, white, Asian, Latinx, et cetera. Those from low-income households and those who are either English language learners or language proficient. So this is just a chance for you to see kind of the different types of student populations that our high schools are serving, because as we all know, that information is critical when we're thinking about outcomes and post-secondary outcomes when we're thinking about our New Orleans public school students. So this is just there for you to hover and explore with any, and if you're not familiar with Tableau, like if and when you want to download, you can download your data here. Something will pop up. You can download the data, you can download the workbook, etc. Just close that out. Now here, this is looking specifically at college enrollment rates in Orleans Parish, especially with regards to Black students and those from low-income households, so historically marginalized or excluded populations. And what this shows is kind of like the large bar here is the overall college enrollment rate, and then the dots are color coordinated to correspond with the specific subgroup. So when you kind of look at it at a glance, you can see the areas in which like those subgroup populations are outperforming or, I guess technically underperforming, but, enrolling at a lower rate than those, than the overall population. We've got Orleans Parish total here, as well as Louisiana statewide total here. So you can go play around with that again at a school level. And of course, always keeping in mind sociodemographic characteristics whenever you're considering any of the data that you're looking at in the overall context. And then this one's specifically college re-enrollment rates. So this is first year persistence, which is the data that we have available from the Louisiana Department of Education. So how many students who had enrolled in college in the fall after they graduated from high school re-enrolled the following fall. So these are students who would have re-enrolled in the fall of 2020. So that is, pandemic times, but that would be the graduating class of 2018, 2019. So again, same graph, same idea. And you can kind of come in and see how those schools are performing. And this is a 2-year versus 4-year college enrollment rate by New Orleans Public High School as well. Kind of this diverging bar chart where on this side, this 4-year colleges, on this side, 2-year colleges, and it's showing over time. So that's the post-secondary data there. I'm gonna skip over to the economic data section as well. Coming on down. So similar to the previous chart, this does the same thing, but looking at like Orleans Parish, Louisiana, and national totals by industry. So we can see where the jobs that are available in Orleans Parish are like outpacing the number of jobs that are available in Louisiana or the USA. So like looking at, say, accommodation and food services, as we hammer home every year, or every time we do life after high school, like this is the bread and butter, no pun intended. So we can see where jobs in Orleans Parish, and educational services is the one that I always find really telling, right? Because we're a decentralized public education system, and the vast majority of our educational workers are working for CMOs or for nonprofits rather than for state or government organizations. We see this real where it's much more, this industry as defined by the Louisiana or by the Bureau of Labor Statistics is much more prominent in Orleans Parish than it would be elsewhere, both at a state and national level. So it's kind of, kind of fun. If that's your thing, you can dig around in there. This is a new addition this year because I found myself asking, and Vincent and I were both regularly as we were going through this data, saying like, okay, well, where are all these jobs? Where are all, if they're saying there's all these government jobs, where are the government jobs? So what this will allow you to do is to select an industry, and then below you'll see all of the subcategories of, types of employment under that industry. So let's say if we're looking at government, and then we want to look, say, at federal government military, it will populate the total number of jobs in Orleans Parish in 2021, the average earnings for that subcategory for that given year, as well as the total growth or loss over a 20-year period. So, it's kind of interesting when you start getting into, say, accommodation and food services, drinking places, I guess is what they call bars. You can kind of see the total number, average earnings. And then when you're getting into some of the fields that we know are more lucrative, but with fewer jobs, go to drilling oil. So they're averaging about 8 jobs in oil and drilling in Orleans Parish, but with these average earnings of $275,000. So when you start kind of looking at the broad level data, and then with this, you're able to drill down, again, no pun intended, a little bit more to see where those jobs are and where the earnings are in specific industries. What I was trying to do with this specific data visualization, and I included a little like how to read this because I think it's really important. This is looking at job and industry growth or loss over a 5-year period, okay? With the blue, like what we're seeing are industries with blues, like these are industries that are experiencing growth. With orange and red, these are the industries that have experienced job loss. What the gray is showing here is the total number of jobs available in that industry. So this is important because when we hover over something like utilities that has seen the largest percentage of growth over a 5-year period. So we're seeing that the utilities industry has grown over 50% in the last 5 years in Orleans Parish. However, they're only employing 319 people. So less than 0.2% of jobs in the city. So yes, there's been a tremendous amount of growth, but it's important to consider the overall jobs that are available in that industry. So that's why we have all of those kind of on this graph here so that you can look at it, but also get the necessary context to, to go with it. This also looks at job growth over time. It just allows you to select a given industry and it'll highlight the bar for that industry. So and if you hover, it's going to tell you the number of jobs that were available in any given year. So really, the accommodation and food industry drop that we saw during the pandemic is really prolific when you look at it visually right there. And finally, when considering youth employment, down here, this is representing within a specific industry, the proportion of that industry that is young people aged 14 to 24. We're using that age range because that's what that's the available data at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, right? So rather than either looking at, 18 to 24 or 16 to 20, we kind of have to look at it in this whole bucket if we want both of those age groups to overlap. So we've got the orange bars are young people aged 14 to 18, the orange bars are 19 to 21, and the blue bars are 22 to 24. But underneath, we can also see that accounts for the total percentage. So when we're talking about retail trade, more than 20% of people working in retail trade are people between the ages of 14 and 24. And with accommodation and food services, 18.3% of all workers in the city in that specific industry are young people between 14 and 24. So it just gives you a chance to kind of see proportionally how many young people are in specific industries across the city. Since we have an extra minute, the other thing I wanted to highlight, well, it's not anything that we built out specifically. It was something that I think is worth highlighting for those of us with an interest in state level post-secondary data. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Board of Regents' new data dashboard that they've built out, but it's really useful. And I wanted to just give them a little shout out and show what they're working with there. So again, if you come to the Board of Regents website, and you can come in here to their master plan for higher ed, there's a data dashboard, and you get all these kind of little, buttons, I guess. So you can click on something like Pell enrollment. And what they have here is Pell enrollment for the last 3 years, percent Pell, percent non-Pell. And there's features over here that allow you to filter either by institution level, by system, by race, by region. So there is a New Orleans feature here. You can click on it. The thing that's of note, and why we don't include this specific data in Life After High School, is this isn't about young people from New Orleans. It's about schools that are located in New Orleans who could be serving, student populations from, all over the state, all over the country, and in some cases internationally as well. So this is if we want to look specifically at post-secondary institutions in New Orleans, which I think for a lot of you it's relevant, and I know for us it is as well. You can come here, you can click on this link, and you can see, looking specifically at post-secondary institutions in New Orleans, how many students are receiving Pell. And then if you wanted to drill down even more, you could look at that by race. So it's just, I'm here to highlight it because I thought it was really cool. And I thought some of you would think that it's really cool too. You can do it by Go Grants as well. So I'll drop the link in the chat for anyone that might want to, along with our link to the cowandata.org sites for anyone who wants to dig around in that. Okay. So before we kind of like step into the next part of the presentation, I just wanted to pause to see if anyone had any questions that were specifically related to this data piece that we've just gone through.
And you can put them in the chat or the comment box. You can also follow up with us after if you don't have them right now.
If not, we can charge ahead. And if you have any at any time, like, feel free to shout them out. Oh, and just one more thing, looking ahead with our Life After High School work. So we're really excited about a partnership that we have with NOLA PS to access, analyze, and share NSC data. That's in the pipeline. So what we're hoping is by our next Life After High School convening an update to the report, which will be in November of 2022, we're going to finally have access to citywide college persistence and graduation rates through our partnership with NOLA PS. I know personally this is data that I've been wanting to see for a very long time, and I think a lot of you that are out there listening have also been wanting to see this city level data for a very long time. So it's a really, really exciting thing that is coming up. I'm going to pass it back to Amanda.
And we have one question in the chat related to that, Kate, from Sal, which is, will you get any 2021 and 2022 data soon from Orleans?
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming at least like the Louisiana Department of Education will release graduation rate data, and they usually release the post-secondary data that comes with that sometime in the summer. And when we do, I'll update all those graphs and I can send them out just with a link to the Life After High School report. And then once we have access to citywide national student clearinghouse data, then we will have kind of real-time, up-to-date data on New Orleans public high school students' post-secondary trajectories and pathways.
Thanks for that question, and thanks so much for that answer and all of your terrific work on this, Kate and Vincent. So grateful. And as we've shared, we do plan to release this an updated version of the report and have an event in November that will be live, in person, full day with workshops and keynote. And we hope you all can join us for that.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a couple other questions coming in if you want to look at those before we move on to the next piece, Kate and Vincent.
I'll open it up. All right, Mia says, would you be, oh yeah, the answer is yes, Mia, let's talk. Mia says, would you be open to presenting economic data to students as they work down to narrow majors that are not only aligned with their values and interests, but that would be lucrative for them if they choose to stay in the city and state? Absolutely. Farad's question is similar, very cool data visualizations. Any thoughts on having students engage with both the data and tools? So like, as Vincent said at the beginning, this is kind of like what drives all of our work, and in building out these kinds of visualizations and making it all publicly available and making the data available to download, is that we really want to encourage people to interact with it and play with it. We want it to feel accessible and interesting to, people who otherwise might not be interested in reading a white paper report. So, yeah, I would love to talk to both members of our collaborative and also anyone else who has any ideas about how best to share this information with our student populations and families more broadly. And I like the idea, Mia, of trying to figure out a way to present this, either in conjunction with counselors or whomever, to help students think about like next steps and, as you say, that are both aligned with their values, but also, hey, what types of fields are lucrative? And even if they are lucrative, how many jobs are available in that field, right? That kind of like, the really important intersection between what jobs are available and how much can you earn doing those jobs and one's individual values. So let's talk.
Thank you for the great questions and answers, and feel free to chat them in if you have more throughout, as well as put them in the question and answer box. And always feel free to reach out to us in the future with questions. So now I'll share a bit more about the Cowan Institute. You heard from both Kate and Vincent an update on data related to educational and economic outcomes for young people in our city. We, in addition to that work, also lead high impact direct programs such as Tulane's Upward Bound program and Trellis Hybrid College. We build capacity in the ecosystem through our collaborative. We have many members from our collaborative on this Zoom right now. We're grateful for your partnership. And then we also develop and shape innovative initiatives. And all of this is in service to our goal to create a system level impact to increase post-secondary success for young people in our city. And ways that we build capacity and foster collaboration in the ecosystem. Our good friend Christina Fontenot will recognize this, one of the leaders in this space. She's on the call. We have our New Orleans College and Career Counseling Collaborative, our College Persistence Collaborative, our FAFSA campaign, our data collaborative, working with practitioners to understand and respond to these data. And then also, of course, this Life After High School convening report, and the report which will be updated in November, an event that will happen then. And we have some of our team members from Upward Bound on the call. Tulane's Upward Bound program works with 9th through 12th graders from public high schools across New Orleans who are first generation students or economically disadvantaged, and supports young people through ACT prep. You can go to the next slide, Kate. College application support, academic tutoring, college campus visits, math and science enrichment, and so much more, so that young people in our city can access college, persist in college, and complete college. So really, we were looking at the data earlier. We have the great honor to work with 115 public high school students in New Orleans every year to support them in their college journeys. And we are so proud of them. We have over time about an 80% college persistence rate among our upward bound students. And so that really is very different from the data we're seeing locally and also nationally. And grateful to each of them, their families, and the staff members and educators who work with them. And also we have launched Trellis Hybrid College to respond to a real need in our city. This is a program to support working adults who don't have associate degrees or bachelor's degrees and really want to complete their degrees in order to advance in their careers. And so this relates directly to the data we were seeing both around post-secondary and also employment. This program is affordable or free for participants. It is at students' own pace, and we have staff members who provide coaching and advisement and support to students in the Trellis program. And by 2025, Trellis will expand to enroll 200 students at a time and graduate at least 50 students per year, and are seeing really great progress along this journey. So that's a bit about not only the data, but also the programmatic ways that we are engaging with the many partners who are on this call and beyond to increase post-secondary outcomes for young people in New Orleans. And we know that the people who are here are engaged and are partnering, but we hope that you'll get even more involved. And these are some ways to do so. You can join our collaborative listserv mailing list. You can join our Cowan Institute newsletter to receive regular updates. You can follow us on social media. And you can also reach out to any one of us or our colleagues if you have questions, if you have ideas, if you have ways that you want to partner. And with that, I will open it up again in case people have additional questions, comments, ideas, visions that they want to put in the chat or the question box. And as people are doing so, want to again express my gratitude to the Carnegie Corporation of New York and Farhad, as well as the Booth Bricker Fund and Heather, who are both here with us and who have been great supporters and thought partners and have really invested in this work. And also want to express so much gratitude to all the partners on the call from College Beyond, College Track, KIPP, Collegiate Academies, New Orleans Public Schools, and of course, the amazing team and colleagues that I get to work with at the Cowan Institute every day. Thank you to Kate and Vincent for your work on this. We have another question that came in.
Like a question from Mia.
For upward bound.
Go ahead. Do you want me to read it, Vincent, or do you want to read it?
Yeah, is your upward bound geared towards certain high schools or any 9 through 12 New Orleans public school students? Is a rising ninth grader welcome to apply to begin participating this summer?
Great question, Mia. And we do have partner high schools, public high schools in the city, but any student is welcome to apply if they're attending a public school and they meet the criteria of being first generation college goer or economically disadvantaged. So if you know of a ninth grader who meets the criteria, please send them our way. Well, if there are no further questions, please do reach out to us with them. Please reach out if you want to meet or collaborate. We hope you'll join our New Orleans College Counseling Collaborative, Data Collaborative, Persistence Collaborative if you're not already a member. We hope that you will peruse the data, download it, respond to it on the website, and we really do look forward to staying connected. I'll pass it to my colleagues if you have any final.
We just had one other question about the slides being available, and we can either, yeah, sorry, Kate answered it.
Sorry, I was just typing it. Yeah, we also recorded the session so we can post it on YouTube. We've got the slides available. And hold on, while I'm still thinking of it, and I have you all here, I'll drop both of those links in the chat. Oh, sorry. to both Cowan Data and the Board of Regents website. There's our Cowan Data drop. And here's the Board of Regents drop.
And like Kate and Vincent said, we'll have this webinar recorded available on our website, and we look forward to staying in touch. Thank you all so much. Stay healthy and take care.
Thanks all.